YouTube live stream, and will stay up for the remainder of the week. So, we are in the middle of a series that we are calling Together, 6 Conversations for a Lifetime of Connection. Now, at Cornerstone, those 6 conversations for us come straight from what we call our values. And values aren't just words on a wall. They're practices that we think can change our lives by helping us live connected to Jesus and in relationship with others. I mean, that really is what life ultimately is about, is being connected with Christ and finding that relationship with others. All throughout the Bible, when God talks about his relationship with people, those who believe in him, he uses marriage as an example for that. So wherever you fall in the relational spectrum today, maybe you're single, maybe you're married, maybe you're divorced, maybe you're widowed or a widower, wherever you fall in that spectrum, there is something for us to learn about relating with God and to God by looking at the example of marriage. And so today we come to the value of gather, investing in others and inviting them to experience faith together. Investing in others and inviting them to experience faith together. This is where we find this dynamic of gathering, and what does it look like? I would like to draw you to Matthew chapter 18. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus is giving what we sometimes call the church discourse. If you ever want to focus on Matthew and learn how Matthew lays out as a text, it centers around 5 key discourses, and this is one of them, where Jesus is going to talk about this impact of, like, how do we live life in relationship to each other under God as believers in Christ. And Jesus is teaching through, his disciples get into an argument over who is the greatest person in the kingdom of heaven, and as he's walking them through this, he comes to this point, and Jesus says, "If your brother sins against you, go and rebuke him in private. If he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he won't listen, take 1 or 2 others with you, so that by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be established. If he doesn't pay attention to them, tell the church." This is actually the first time the word church is used in the New Testament. Could you imagine hearing this and not knowing what church meant? Well, who are we? What gathering are we supposed to tell? And Jesus is going to establish that. If he doesn't pay attention even to the church, let him be like a Gentile and a tax collector to you. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if 2 of you on earth agree about any matter that you pray for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there among them. That's a beautiful statement about church, but think about the dynamic of gathering with a spouse in marriage. I don't know about you, like for anyone who's married in the room, Corey and I in 26 years have never, ever experienced conflict. Never. And it typically works out great because I'm always right. Really, this guy. We have had seasons, if you were like us, we have had seasons where we didn't know that we wanted to talk with each other. Seasons where we would just look across the room at each other and go, someone has to break the silence. Seasons where do we forgive or do we not? And every single time it comes back to this kind of passage right here. And what happens most often in a marriage relationship in life is we want to practice the opposite of what Jesus says. Jesus says, if someone offends you, you go to them. But what we like to do is wait for the person to come to us. And would you believe that every time I've offended Corey, I've been absolutely clueless to the fact that I've just offended her? Until she lets me know. And then we work through this process of living and restoring. And this is what the dynamic of gathering is about. Even the extension of forgiving or saying you hurt me is investing in the person. Investing in others and inviting them to experience faith together. That's gathering. And every day in my household, I have to choose to gather with my spouse. And she has to choose to gather with me. We could live completely isolated, separate lives under one roof. But we have to choose to gather together, to invest in each other, and invite each other to experience life together, in particular faith. So how do you strengthen life through sharing it with others? Here's the thought for you, Genesis 2:18. This is where we see God shape Eve and present Eve to Adam. A couple of months ago, we preached through this text, and you get to this dynamic. It's not good for man to be alone. In this conversation, God has just presented to Adam himself, and God was with Adam, is how the story actually begins. God was with Adam, and God created before Adam every creature from the dust. Now, in Genesis 1, God speaks and everything appears. In Genesis 2, there's an interesting connection because the man himself was just formed from the dust, and God breathed into him the breath of life. And now, right before that very same person who was made from the dirt, God is going to bring a unique creation right before him of every single living creature from the dirt. And guess what Adam sees? There is nothing like me. And that was significant for him to see. I'm not like God, and I'm not like the elephant. I'm not like the rhino. I'm not like the eagle. I'm not like the turkey. I'm not like whatever, fill in the blank. And so God says, I will make a suitable helper for you. In that presentation, Adam says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. He recognizes we're of the same substance. We can be together. Proverbs 18:22 says, a man who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Interestingly enough, I searched the scriptures, Corey. It never says the woman who finds a husband finds a good thing. I am so sorry. Look at what it doesn't say. The one who finds the perfect partner. The one who finds the ideal woman. It doesn't say this. For every flaw, for every imperfection, for everything, the one who finds a wife finds a good thing. There's something profound about what is being said here. Because even in a fallen and broken world, a place where Adam and Eve presented to each other in the perfection of God, in a world that is imperfect and where people are imperfect and sin has its way over both, the scripture still tells us the one who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. There's something about the togetherness in humanity, in particular in this relationship we call married, that's profound. You can't be married by yourself, but some marriages are incredibly lonely. Maybe you've experienced that, or maybe you are experiencing that. And it's difficult. When I tell you we've gone through seasons, we've gone through seasons. When you wake up next to a person and it still feels like we're not together. You can't be married by yourself, but some marriages are incredibly lonely. The CDC actually describes in America today loneliness as an epidemic health concern. And you would think for all the people we can be social with, whether it's digital or in person, certainly we wouldn't be lonely. But you see this unfold. So how do we live this value of together? I love this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche gets a lot of under the bus dynamics when it comes to Christians. Nietzsche lived and grew up in a very abusive family. He had a religiously abusive family that would hammer him with their religious traditions and then display at home an absence of God in their lives, an absence of compassion in their lives. And as Nietzsche grew older, he looked at life, in particular the relationship he had with his sister, and he said, if you represent what God is supposed to be, I'm not for sure I want to be a part of what God is. And he walked away from the faith he was raised in. And Nietzsche has this profound statement. It's not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. Wednesday night, I had the privilege to fill in for our youth director, John, and we were having a open Q&A, ask Pastor Jeremy anything, and I really mean, like, I give the youth wide open permission to ask me whatever they want to. And so one kid raises their hand. I said, yeah, go ahead. And he says, so, your best friend's toes, which one do you like the best? And I said, well, and I like to make them feel as uncomfortable as they do me, to be honest with you. I said, I get to go to bed with my best friend every night, and I get to see her toes without socks, and I like every one of them. And they were like, ooh. They were like, spicy. And the adult volunteers were like, oh, can he say that? Corey is my absolute best friend in the world. There's no one like her. I think Nietzsche's right. It's not a lack of love, it's a lack of friendship. And we allow all these other things to get in the way of building friendship with our spouse. And we actually forget how to be friends with that person over time. We've been married 26 years, and you would think over 26 years we would just be the same people, right? Nothing would change. We have to keep learning each other as we change. How we had to learn how to be parents together, how we have to learn how to be in our 40s together. Just last night, we were talking about something, and I was trying to figure out the age of Corey's brother, who's 8 years older than she is. And she's like, no, he's not that old yet. And one of the older children, Anna Grace, she says, well, Mom, you're almost 50. You should have seen the look on Corey's face. It was like shock. Wait, what? And every season of life, you have to relearn that person and re-engage them. You have to invest in your spouse, invest in others, and invite them to experience life together. So what are some obstacles to being together? Lack of time for each other. We could call it busyness, but busyness, which may be epidemic in the United States, often overflows with, I find other things more important than you. We give our time to what we love. We give our time to what we love. If you love fishing more than your spouse, you will give your time to fishing. I happen to enjoy fishing. I would give it up in a heartbeat for her. If it's a whatever hobby, you want to spend time in your favorite novel with your novelist more than you want to spend with your spouse. A lack of time for each other. It's not that we lack time. It's that we don't give time to each other. We're not inviting each other into life together. Dwindling emotional intimacy. Unshared feelings, fears, and futures. I happen to think it's far easier to share my fears with Corey than my feelings and my future. Because what if she doesn't like my future hope and she squishes that one? You can make fun of my fears all day long, I'm good. But if you squash my hopes, it's devastating, right? And what about feelings? Do we really like to be open and honest about our feelings? Last week was my grandmother's birthday, and I was in a workshop with several members here from Cornerstone, and that day, a week ago, stupid Facebook reminds you about people that you care about. Why would they do that in the middle of our workshop? And there's a picture right there of me with my grandmother on one of her birthdays, and I just feel grief. I could have cried all day. But we're in the middle of a workshop with other pastors and other churches, and you can't cry right now. This is not the time. I get home, and I texted Corey, man, I feel like this today. I get home, we get in the car, she meets me here, and she says, do you want to talk about it? Mm-mm. I'm like a 6-year-old kid from Brussels sprouts. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. We want to talk, mm-mm. Later that night, we're laying down for bed, and she just asked the question, do you want to talk about it? And I told her later, I said, you gave me the permission to cry and to share. She's like, I didn't see you cry. I said, there was one singular tear on the right side of my face, but it felt good. She gives me permission to feel and to be able to share that. But when we're not together, we dwindle in our emotional intimacy. We don't know if we want to share that with our spouse or not. And you take that, like you start to watch, where am I not together with the Lord? And all of a sudden, I don't want to share my fears, my feelings, and my futures with Him. And I start to distance myself from God. Dwindling intimacy is significant. How about sexual disinterest or dysfunction as a way to separate togetherness? How do you continue, if this is what it's supposed to look like, what happens when you're disinterested in each other? What happens when the libido is not quite the same? The sex drive has changed. About 12 years ago, I had a guy come in my office. He was 82 years old, and he sits down, he says, Pastor, I think my wife is still the most beautiful woman alive. And I still desire her, and my body has changed. How do we enjoy each other? And I said, well, let's get in the same room and let's talk. And they came together, and we talked openly and honestly about some things, and it reignited this beautiful chemistry between them. And it was so fun to watch the two of them re-love each other. But what we get into is, if the body betrays us in so many different ways, whether it's through interest or through activity, we just go, I want nothing to do with it. And we forget how to be physically intimate with each other, and that starts to create separation. What about dissimilar hobbies? You keep pursuing everything else but each other, and your hobbies separate you. Nothing wrong with having your own hobbies. Nothing wrong with having your own hobbies. But when they become the pursuit of everything, that's where things begin to change. Unshared faith. And this can happen in a house where two people say yes to Jesus. One of you has stopped growing in that faith. Or maybe one spouse has completely rejected that faith altogether. Unshared faith can greatly separate people. It's difficult. What about the dynamic of bringing this together? When you start to see, like if God's desire is for the husband and the wife to be one flesh together, everything in this world that's not of God is going to work to keep you apart. Even things that we deem are okay, like a hobby. Things that God made and called good, like sex and emotional intimacy. Everything in this world that is marred by sin will work in your life to keep you apart. And if you watch, it doesn't take much in a relationship to actually create distance between you. Being together takes intentionality. It takes work. So what are some of the opportunities that we have around this intentional pull of being together to invest in your spouse and invite them to experience faith together? Opportunities like learn each other's love languages. If you've ever gone through any kind of premarital counseling or marriage counseling, you may have heard of the 5 love languages. There's a free test you can take online that will help you understand what your spouse's and what your love language is. But here's the thing. When you learn language It's helping you overcome and establish culture. Corey and I don't come from the same kind of background. In Corey's family, they are educated. Her dad was a high-ranking military officer. People used to yes, sir, and no, sir, that guy. And she got to watch that in her world. In my life, my grandfather worked from being a junior high dropout, because that's what you did in the Great Depression time, and become a veteran, and then came out of the war and worked his way up through a company to becoming vice president, and then we lost everything when the oil fields in Texas crashed. But we had a farm, and we worked hard. We were a very blue-collar family. We came from two different cultures. I'm the first college graduate in my family. We came from two different cultures. Guess what we had to do? Learn each other's languages. When you get married, you actually start building a new culture. And learning a love language is part of that, because a love language will tell you how a person shows and receives love. And by learning each other's love languages, you're able to interact on a way that says, I see you, and I want to invest in you. And not just in the way I want you to invest in me. I want to meet you on your terms. Learn each other's love languages. It's a great opportunity. Again, the assessment is free online. Look it up, 5 Love Languages assessment. Define quality time together and meet in that space. Would you believe that people have different definitions of quality time? For some people, quality time is binge watching on Netflix. And just so that you're in the same room and you're eating out of the same bowl of popcorn or the same bag of chips, that means you're being in quality experience with each other. And for some of you, that's exactly how it works, right? This is quality time. We're in the same space, we're having a shared experience, and we're sharing popcorn. That's quality time. For some of you, that would never fly. We didn't look each other in the eye. We never had a conversation. We never held hands. Whatever the conversation is, you would go, that wasn't quality time. When I take my little girls fishing, one of us leaves their fishing pole at home. My little girls love to fish. It was a big deal last year. They were on the target to catch 100 fish through the summer, and they did. And it was, why it was significant? I don't know. We got a guy in our church who caught 800 fish last summer, at one time, kind of. But you're just like, how in the world? But they wanted to catch 100 fish. I never took my fishing pole when we went fishing together. They can bait their own hook. They have no problem doing that. They don't like taking the fish off as much. But guess what happens if I take my fishing pole fishing with them? I am not spending quality time with my kids. We are together, but I am focused on Daddy's got to catch a fish. And they're over there like pulling fish after fish after fish after fish. Take off your own fish, kid. I'm sorry, let me see. Define quality time and meet in that space together. Make sure you're on the same page about what it means. You may think working in the garden is quality time, and your spouse hates yard work. So define it and meet there together. Schedule physical affection or sex. What do you mean schedule? That's not romantic. I understand. Romance is bonus. Sometimes physical intimacy is necessary, and you have to fit it in your schedule. What time are the kids at school? When is lunch break? And that sounds crass until you go read 1 Corinthians. And you start to realize how quickly life around you can keep you from each other. And without even planning it, you start to deny each other physical intimacy. Paul talks about being so intentional about it. Husbands, do not withhold yourself from your wives, and wives, do not deny your husbands, for your bodies belong to each other. If you have to be apart, do so only for an agreed upon time, so that the enemy doesn't come in and destroy you. Set aside time to pray here, and then come back together. And in that come back together, Paul is talking about a physical sexual experience. be in this space together. It's significant. It's important. We were made to express to each other that way, and we can let everything else get in the way. Whether it's kids or work or schedules or whatever. And sometimes you just got to put romance out the window because your togetherness is so significant. And if you have to do that, do that. Schedule time. Discover a new activity just for y'all. And I'm using that in the most appropriate sense. I don't know if I've ever put y'all on a slide before, even though I grew up in the world of y'all. If you can't figure out how to be together, go find something for together. Go find it. I do not like making puzzles in the wintertime, nor the spring, nor the fall, nor the summer. Corey and the littles will sit down in the basement and they'll have a puzzle all over the table. And I always wait for the last piece and then you get your hand smacked. You are not allowed to put the last piece in. But I want to do a puzzle with you. You are not doing the puzzle with us. Discover something just for the two of you. Just for the two of you. You don't have to bring the kids along for this one. What's something that you can enjoy together? You don't have to bring work along for this one. You don't have to bring the neighbors along for this one. What's something you enjoy together? And if you don't have it, go find it. Like, make time, because in the discovery of what you're looking for together, guess what's going to happen? You're going to invest in each other. You're going to invite each other, and you're going to build life and faith together. Since we moved to Minnesota, we have experienced it in this way. What's our winter thing? We don't have a winter thing yet, by the way. We're working on it. Right? Like, we've tried cross-country skiing. She has. I won't get on the skis. We've tried ice skating. She has. I won't get on the ice skates. She's really, I like watching her ice skate. She's really good. I want no part of the ice. I want to protect this guy right here. I've tried ice fishing. She hasn't. But you came out to you looked inside. Does it count? Okay, never mind. She's tried it. Apparently it's not for us, though. Snowshoeing we haven't tried yet. Snowmobiling we have tried. I still want to try dog sledding, but we got to go further up north for that. We're going to find our winter thing so that we can enjoy each other in the outdoor. We love the outdoors. So what's our winter thing? We do this together. Like, go find some things, but you got to find something for y'all. You will drift unless you intentionally work to stay together. Invest. That's the word. Invest in each other, right? Invite each other and invest in each other to experience faith and life together. For where two or more are gathered together in my name, I am there among them. There is power in that. God, who established and made marriage, is for it. He's for you being one. The world is against it. Everything in this world will fight against it. But God continues to say, this is what it looks like. And as we see that together, it also illustrates how much more profound our relationship with God would be. Schedule time to be with Him. Discover something between you and God, a space where you can meet together. Work that through. Our marriages and the way they're supposed to witness tell us so much about who God is and how we relate with Him. For where two or three are gathered, He is with us. So may you take the challenge today to experience the invitation